I met someone new at the hospital tonight. Someone with a very interesting story. Mark came over to watch YouTube videos on his break as I sat behind the reception desk, and he had someone new with him, wearing brown scrubs signaling he was a custodian. Mark said his name was Gerald, and they had struck up a friendship as he cleaned the switchboard office. The two had started talking about spooky stuff. Mark had told him about the calls from the third floor, the phantom phone calls that happened in the wee hours, and Gerald had told him about the strange occurrences he had heard about on the third floor as well. It's not really that scary, but it's pretty weird. I told him I'd love to hear it, and he began. It all started when Maria disappeared. The meeting was just as it was every day. The head custodian giving out assignments, talking about budgets, assigning special teams, before he started down a very different track. He told us the third floor would be cleaned in pairs now, and that no one would be cleaning alone after 8 p.m. There were quite a few raised eyebrows at this. It would take longer to clean if they had to do it in pairs, but the next announcement really got them staring. Management has asked us to remind you that if you hear anyone calling your name from a room you know to be empty, do not respond. Leave the area and inform a member of the custodial team. You will not be disciplined. Management wants to ensure that no one else goes missing on shift. We broke then, going to clean our assigned areas. They were, of course, talking about Maria. Maria had been a custodian at the hospital for several years. She had been working her way through cosmetology school, living with her mother and helping with the bills. Anyone who had worked with Maria knew that she was passionate about her family and her education. She was friendly, but she made it very clear that she didn't have time for boys or needless waste. She worked, she went home, she went to school, and then she repeated the process the next day. She had disappeared one night during her shift, and it was harder to write off as just another young person disappearing with their boyfriend. Staff had been questioned, work schedules had been looked over, cameras had been watched, and Maria remained unfound. The footage showed that Maria had come to work, clocked in at the scanner box, and gone off to the shift meeting. She had taken her card up to the third floor and began to clean. She cleaned 3 North, the short stay wing, and moved on to 3 South, the longer residency wing. Many of these rooms were empty. COVID had made long-term stay a matter of quarantine, and those people were housed downstairs in the ER overflow. She had gone to lunch at 7:30 and then returned to her duties. At 9, a camera near the nurse's station had seen her turn suddenly and look into room 405. She had stood as though hearing something inside. The mop she had been putting away looked like it might fall out of her hands, and she let it fall from the cart as she took a step towards the room she'd been staring at. She stepped into the room like a sleepwalker and never stepped back out again. That had been a week ago. The announcement about the voices had come after they'd interviewed a few of her friends. They said that she had been nervous lately. She claimed that she hadn't been sleeping well. She told them that she had dreamed about this place. In the dream, she was cleaning the hallways, and from the doors, she could hear voices calling her name. They told her to come investigate, to come look, to come and see, and just as she would catch sight of the speaker, she would come awake, crying. She couldn't remember what had been in those rooms, but it always filled her with a sense of dread. When she started hearing the voices at work, too, she had asked people to come with her. They said she was afraid to be alone, especially on the third floor, where the voices seemed to follow her. She had stopped sleeping at all, her eyes bearing dark circles, and the last day they had seen her at work, she confided that her studies had suffered as well. She was slowly driving herself crazy with these delusions, one of the other housekeepers had said. I think if it had gone on much longer, she would have probably crashed her car on the way to work one morning. Now Maria had gone, and more than one custodian had refused to clean the third floor, something that was about to become a big problem for me. I was cleaning the first floor bathrooms when Roger approached me. Gerald, I need you to move for a while. I looked up from my mop bucket. Yeah? Who quit? Jan. After I told her she'd have to clean the third floor, I need to move you up there to work with Daryl. Christ, you sure that's why she quit? I know, but you know how hard it is to fire anyone around here. Look, I just need you to clean up there for a couple of days, a week tops. I'll even give you a couple of days off, with pay, once we replace Jan. What do you say? I thought it over. 4-day weekend, 2 of them with pay, and all I had to do was clean with Daryl for a few nights. Yeah, I suppose that would be okay. I had already figured that I would be doing most of the cleaning myself, but that wasn't too bad either. Cleaning was monotonous, but it wasn't terribly hard. Half the rooms I'd have to clean were empty anyway, so it would just be a little light upkeep. What was the worst that could happen, right? I took my cart and headed upstairs. When the elevator doors opened, I could already see a cart waiting in what had been the patient's waiting area, and was now just a corridor with benches in it. I could see soda cans on it, 3 or 4 empties, and about 3 others that were waiting to be sacrificed, and knew just whose it was. Daryl's cart was much like Daryl, messy and unconcerned with it. Daryl had about as much business being a custodian as I had being a pigeon, but Roger had been right. They were desperate for help, and Daryl came to work, even if he didn't do anything. I walked over to 3 North and introduced myself, asking what still needed to be cleaned. The charge nurse sniffed. Everything to my knowledge. I haven't seen Daryl at all. Not that I'm surprised. I sighed. I had hoped that Jan would have at least cleaned 3 North before quitting, but I suppose that was too much to hope for. I set to work with my mop and my cleaners and started cleaning up behind patients and staff. It took forever. Some of the toilets in the patients' rooms looked like they hadn't been cleaned in years, and when I finally rolled my cart off the wing, it was after 9. I was thinking longingly about my dinner, but decided to finish 3 South so I could eat and start on 3 East when I got done. As expected, 3 South was a ghost town. The nurse's station was empty, the monitors black, and the whole wing was quiet. I wondered which one of these rooms I'd find Daryl asleep in, and shook my head as I set about dusting the nurse's station. The dust wasn't too thick. It was obvious that the station had either been dusted recently, or the wing had been cleared out recently. The break room was also pretty clean. I only had to clean a few moldy food items out of the fridge and change some garbage. The bathrooms needed cleaning. Clearly Daryl didn't do bathrooms, and once the station was clean, it was time to head to the rooms. As I started cleaning, I kept my ears peeled for sounds. Now, I didn't believe in voices from rooms. Ghosts and spooks were totally something I didn't put a lot of stock in. But I did believe in serial killers, or people who kidnap people to sell them into the human trafficking market. Maria had been a very pretty girl, young and well-built, and the thought that someone had somehow taken her from the hospital wasn't terribly far-fetched. If that was the case, and this was a place they usually used to take their prey, I really didn't want to get grabbed or stabbed next. As I cleaned, though, I did start to think I heard something. At first, I wrote it off as the air conditioner, the ancient old thing making noises and trying to rattle the dust motes free of its guts. The more I cleaned, however, the more the air started to sound like words. I ignored it, thinking it was just Daryl playing tricks, if it wasn't my own mind playing tricks on me. I kept cleaning, stepping into the rooms with the open doors, and dusting the beds and the nightstands. I mopped them, checked the bathrooms, and kept the mop at hand in case I had to defend myself. I felt a little sorry for anyone who tried to jump out and scare me, because they were certainly going to get a mop handle upside the head. I was cleaning one of those rooms when I looked up into the big window behind me and stopped in my tracks. The door to the room behind me was open, the room looking much the same as the one I was cleaning, and someone was standing in the doorway, someone I would have known anywhere. My mother looked exactly the same as I remembered her. Her dark hair, usually up in a bun on her head, fell around her in a long wave of ebony. She was wearing a light white dress, her bare feet poking out from beneath it. She was standing in the doorway, arms spread wide, inviting me to come to her. Her face was serene, restful, exactly the way I remembered her the last time I'd seen her. It was exactly the way she had looked as her casket lid shut and we put her in the ground. I turned around, but she was gone. I put the mop in the bucket and stuck my head out of the room. I called out, seeing if anyone was near. I'd been cleaning for nearly an hour and still hadn't seen Daryl. I wasn't afraid to clean by myself. I wasn't superstitious, didn't believe in spirits, but not seeing anyone was beginning to become nerve-wracking. When no one called out or challenged me, I got back to work. I closed the door to the room I had just been in, but as I wheeled my cart away, I heard a soft voice from the room across from this one. It was low and inviting, and I couldn't help but think of my mom again. The voice was calling to me, begging me to come to her, and I stopped again to look through the door to that room. She was gone, no one inside the room but the shadowy furniture, but it almost seemed like I could feel someone watching me from inside. She was there, and she wanted me to come to her. As I stood dithering in the hall, a multitude of voices called from the doors that stood open farther up. I recognized all of them. They were the voices of lost loved ones, old friends, and others who had passed on. I heard my great-uncle, my first girlfriend, my third-grade English teacher, and so many more. I heard them calling to me, trying to entice me into their room, to entice me from this world, and I felt my feet pulled towards them as they called. I'd have walked willingly into those rooms, but at that moment, an alarm went off, and I was jarred back to reality. Code blue, room 302. Code blue, room 302. I shook myself. Somewhere on 3 North, there would be people with crash carts in full sprint. Somewhere on 3 North, nurses would be pulling charts and calling doctors. Family members might be yelling or crying, praying to God for their loved ones to come out of this crisis. On 3 South, however, there was only me and the multitude of voices. With the last of my resolve, I ran. I cocked an eyebrow at Gerald. What happened after that? I came to talk to Mark about it. I know he's had some weird experiences in this place, and I was hoping he might have some insight. He brought me down here to talk to you. I shrugged. I can talk to Carl. Maybe he'll go up to the 3rd floor with you when you need to clean. Seeing Carl wander by about that time, I called out to him, and he came somberly over to us. I made my request, and Carl agreed, but said he couldn't tonight. 3rd floor is closed for the moment anyway. We're missing a custodian, and a few of us are being sent to search 3 South. After the girl disappeared last week, this will probably get the wing closed off. As it happens, the wing did close. It was temporarily closed, of course. They'll have patients in there again if the need arises. God help us if one of them goes missing. Staff is one thing, but if their precious patients go missing, they might have to actually do something about it. Gerald went back to his usual cleaning route. We still talk sometimes. He's a good guy, and I don't mind having a cup of coffee with him. We guys who have been privy to the strange happenings of the hospital have to stick together, after all.
Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. Thank you so much for joining me for tonight's reading. It's time once again to thank our patrons. Thanks to Leslie Lou Riddle for being our spooky skeleton tier contributor. Thanks, Leslie. We just couldn't do it without you. If you too would like to become one of my patrons, come on down. We have several tiers that might interest you. Or if you prefer your spooky to come in book form, you can always check out my link to my Amazon account. I have 4 books up now. I'm sure there's one that'll suit your fancy. Or, of course, just come back next week for another story. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful